No breaks for Ted, folks. Wow. So apparently, I don't understand this. The book is going to have a full announcement later on today at 3 p.m. via D&D Live. Yet D&D Beyond was unable to announce that it's coming out and put out all of their content, a 15-minute interview discussing it. Comicbook.com put out stuff on it. Todd Kenrick put out stuff on it. So what I'm gathering is there was some sort of D&D press briefing earlier in the week. Everybody was under NDA to not release anything until Friday at probably 8 a.m. or whatever it is Pacific time. Then once Friday rolls around, they're able to release it, and then all of this information comes out. Obviously, Amazon beats everybody to the chase with their Thursday night stuff, and then here we are talking about it now. So, you know, again, it is what it is. I kind of beat everybody to the chase with a little bit of coding information, but I guess the way to do that is invite me to the press briefings, and then I sign an NDA and I can't talk about it. So I went through, I took a bunch of notes, I watched all the videos, so I was going to save this till after, but there's so much stuff to go over and art and things to show, let's talk about it. So here's the comicbook.com article. It's going to be 224 pages is the length of the book. It will have 5 stat blocks for gem dragons, which have psionic abilities, as well as great worms, which I'll show you some art and talk about those. Let's see. It's going to be told in the eye and the mind of Fizban the Fabulous. Again, I didn't go over the fact that yes, Fizban is a character from Dragonlance. It even says in the D&D Beyond trailer, Hero of the Lance. So there's references, obviously, to Dragonlance. It is not a Dragonlance source book, though. Fizban will provide running commentary. It's going to be done by Amy Vorpal. And the way this is probably the best thing I can tell you, is it's going to be like Volo's Guide to Monsters or Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. Primarily a bestiary, however you pronounce it, book for DMs, but also has stuff for players. Now, this is not something unfamiliar to us in the past from, again, Volo's and Mordenkainen's, but in older editions, this is what we got. You got a book that would have a ton of stuff, but it also would have player stuff baked in. So this is going to be apparently about a third of this book is going to be monsters, whether they be dragons or dragon-related creatures. The rest will be kind of other information. Okay? The book will contain new options for playing Dragonborn characters, including gem Dragonborns. They're calling that Draconic Ancestries for Dragonborns, which I'm pretty sure is just going to be what we saw in the Unearthed Arcana, maybe with some tweaks. 2 subclasses, again, what we've received in Unearthed Arcana, the Drake Warden Ranger and the Ascended Dragon Monk. And then, even though the Amazon thing said new feat, it says new feats, spells, and magic items will be provided in this book. So, we haven't heard about magic items. It makes so much sense to have that. New spells, obviously, it'll be from the Draconic things. We'll maybe get some changes to the names and abilities, but we've already seen the Draconic spells, and we've seen the feats. D&D Beyond mentioned that they liked it because each one of them provides you some sort of combat usage, which tracks with what they were originally. And they even went so far as to describe the chromatic one, and it seems to be, at least from their description, exactly what we saw in the Unearthed Arcana. Okay, moving on. New take on the dragon lore. James Wyatt, who wrote this, also wrote the original 3.5e Draconomicon, so we've got the best person in charge doing this. Noted that the book contains a brief mythic origin story discussing how dragons were present at the making of the first world, the predecessor to the D&D multiverse. If you've been watching Loki, the concept of multiverses is very present in everybody, and I know they probably didn't know that, but that's a good correlation. The idea is that dragons are essential to the material plane, which is why they have such an impact on the world when they establish their lair. Dragons are an essential part of the world, which is why we named the game after them. Okay, and then they go on to just talk about this concept of echoes, right? Every dragon has an echo of itself on other worlds. They're talking about big, massive, Great Worm-style dragons, right? A given dragon in the Forgotten Realms might have an echo on the world of Greyhawk. It can develop the sense of dragon sight to communicate in a waking dream with its echo on another world, and then eventually coalesce with its form to form a Great Worm. So this is, again, concept of multiverses and variants and things. If you've been watching Loki, this will be very familiar to you. But you have your presence here on Faerun, and you have another presence on Greyhawk, Mystara, wherever you are. You activate, tap into Dragon Sight, whatever it is, and you recognize that there are other echoes of you, or you are an echo of someone else that can get to an existential crisis, I guess, if you're thinking about that too much, on other planes of existence. Once you start making contact, you can coalesce yourself into a true great worm, as you've combined all of your echoes from all multiverses into one. Speaking of that, if we go and look at Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, the Dream of the Blue Veil spell does reference the first world right here. It says, material planes hold an infinite number of worlds. They talk about it. It's not always so. Various scholars speak of a primordial state, a single reality they call the first world, which preceded the multiverse as we know it. Many of the peoples and monsters that inhabit the worlds in the material planes originated there. After the first world was shattered by a great cataclysm, giving birth to the worlds that came in its wake, the progeny of the first, elves, dwarves, beholders, and other iconic creatures took root on world after world, like seeds scattered by a cosmic wind. If the musing of the great sages are true, every world is a reflection, and in some cases, a distortion of the first world. So basically, yeah, apparently Bahamut or Tiamat were there, and they caused this shattering, or they were part of it, and the first world led to the development of the multiverse. Okay, so we went through, I think we pretty much hit anything. Is a treasury, a toolbox for players. Even as we're making the final touches to the book and getting it ready for printing, I'm marking out printouts of the book on one side and then writing down notes on my next campaign on the other, says James Wyatt, released on October 19th. All right, Chris Hoffer from comicbook.com, who wrote that article, has this art here. This is a silver great worm. So this is stat blocks. So great worms, again, we talked about the echoes, but they're essentially like gods, and they do have access to the mythic abilities that we've seen in Mythic Odysseys of Theros, making all of the Great Worm versions of dragons essentially CR 20 plus monsters. And you can see a great silver worm here with the, again, typically the floating horns and things like that are an aspect of a gem Dragonborn, but this is just a sheer, almost like a DBZ aura power of just crystal shards floating around this dragon. There's the front cover. We see the silver worm, right? It has mythic actions, right? And we scroll down. Here are some gem Dragonborn, again, tapping into what I just mentioned, the psionic abilities of them, having their horns sort of psionically float above them. That's a staple and sort of an aspect of gem Dragonborn or gem dragons in general. This right here is what they're calling a turtle great worm, which we assume to be a great worm version of a dragon turtle. Look at the size of the ships compared to this guy. So that apparently is what we've got going on there. I don't think we had anything else. No, these were all, the art was by Crystal Sully. All right, then there was an article released on D&D Beyond about what we know about Gem Dragonborns before the book comes out. They did go on to say that the dragons that will be included are the ones we see here: Amethyst, Crystal, Emerald, Sapphire, and Topaz. That means that if I recall in the lore, Obsidian dragons were destroyed, but that does mean that they're leaving out Amber dragons, which is a lesser known, but still a Gem Dragonborn type that exists. Apparently that will not be included. Okay. Let's see. Here it is on D&D Beyond. You can pre-order it right now if you so choose. Let me see if I have. Now, in the D&D Beyond video, they did say 20 different types of dragons. Many of you have pointed out, and I don't disagree, that it might just be 4 age classes of the 5 gem dragons, right? So that would be Wormling, Young, Adult, and Ancient, and that would be your 20. But the fact that we do mention Great Worms is a new status of worm or age class of dragons, or a status of dragons. So maybe it will be completely new dragons. We will have 5 extra types, because there is going to be tables and things for rolling up dragon personalities and determining things like that to build a specific dragon for use in your campaign. Draconic ancestries, unearthed arcana subclasses, feats, spells, magic items. Oh, more about the lair and the hordes of dragons specific. We have a little bit in the Dungeon Master's Guide about rolling for dragon hordes. This, again, similar to the old Draconomicon of past, will have what you will find in a silver dragon's lair versus what you will find in a red dragon's lair. Specific stuff, as well as maps of those different lairs, and again, the hordes associated with it. Todd Kenrick said there will be Draconian stat blocks. So if you're familiar with Dragonlance, you'll know about Draconians. They will have stat blocks in the book. However, the Draconians will not be playable. They have stat blocks as NPCs or monsters, not. And I guess Jeremy Crawford said that they're occasionally prime to blow up or turn into acid. So apparently your experience of being able to play a Dragonborn or a Draconian type creature in 5th edition will be to just play Dragonborn. Draconians will have stat blocks that you can play. That's one of the extra draconic creatures that will be an option for you, but not as a playable option. Mythic Monsters, yeah, that's about all I have. Again, I'll put links to this. This is this tweet here from Christian Hoffer. Here's the D&D, thecomicbook.com article. Again, here's Todd Kenrick's 10-minute video all about this. Here is there's a D&D Beyond 15-minute video all about this. Here's the article that they released earlier today, the D&D Beyond pre-order. Yeah. So that is all that I could find. I'm sure as of me making this video, some other website has probably released their article on it. Polygon, IGN, somebody else has probably done something. I'm sure I've already been tagged in like 6 or 7 different things. Oh, I just got one that says make a video. This is, what is this? Dungeons and Dragons Futurist Carnivals and Dragons. This is from Gizmodo. Well, we're right on the right track there. So, just scrolling through this article here, I'll show you guys as we go through this. This is Combo, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. Dread Domains. I already kind of made a video on Wild Beyond the Witchlight, but I don't really care. Here's a close-up of the image that I showed that was part of the Dyson Miscellany. Here's some more art from that. Very nice looking art. All right, let's get to Fizban's. Do we have anything new in this? Rules, stats, and details about dragons. Another third. Oh, okay, here we go. It's compatible with Volo's Guide. It's about a third. Monsters are a third of the book. Another third is really aimed at the Dungeon Master, who's building an encounter, an adventure, a campaign about a specific kind of dragon, and goes through focusing on 20 different kinds of dragons in the course of that chapter. Many of them get lair maps, and they've got tables of personalities and adventure books and the sort of objects you might find in their lairs. And I guess that's supposed to be lairs. All this stuff intended to help you flesh out the dragon you're using. Then the remaining third is player character options and more DM tools that apply to dragons more generally. There's a definite focus in this book on stuff that you can use at the table right away. Everything from dragon lair maps to a ton of new dragon stat blocks and non-dragon stat blocks. Various dragon-related monsters show up. We try to take a show, don't tell approach to talking about dragons. So rather than talking to you for a while about the personalities, we give you a table to develop them. This is way more in depth than any of the stuff we've seen so far, so I'm reading this article to you here. There's a lot of player-facing content, but really the focus of giving you the stuff to use right away is what we would stress. But even in Fizban leans more towards showing than telling. What it does want to tell you can include some very interesting thematic questions for players to ask, diving into the grand cosmology of what makes D&D's biggest, most powerful dragons so special. This is talking about the Great Worms that we mentioned earlier. Challenge rating above 20. Great Worms aren't going to be some kind of intimidating foes you can fling in an adventuring party, blah, blah, blah. There's an idea running through this book that every dragon has echoes on other worlds. We talked about that already. It's that power and material plane, mythic origin story. When they establish their lairs, here it is. When they establish their lairs, their magic seeps out into the terrain around them. Their horn is a focus for that magic. Dragons are just in the world, an essential part of the world, which is really why we named the game after them. The new dragon types: Emerald, Crystal, Sapphire, Topaz. Gem dragons also factor in the rules forward focus in that the form of new sub-races included in the book Gem Dragonborn. So in the player's handbook, to be Dragonborn, it's distinctly prismatic, metallic, or gem heritage. Again, we've kind of seen this in the Unearthed Arcana Draconic options. Beyond race options, it'll have the 2 new subclasses, which we kind of already knew. It's not just if you're choosing one of these new subclasses like a dragon-blooded sorcerer, but you might be a cleric or a Bahamut or Tiamat and have a dragony feel that way, or you might be a warlock with an archfey patron, which happens to be a Gleamstone dragon. Well, that's new. Gleamstone dragon, which is a Feywild dragon included in this book. So you've got a dragony feel that way while you're using any of the subclasses or other rules in the game already. Okay, so that's a new one. Gleamstone dragon. Brand new one. I don't think I've ever heard of that one before, so that's another drag and drop we just got there. All right, and even more, the mysteries of the dragons is what appeals to Fizban's dragons. I think This really has a gigantic toolbox full of stuff for players and DMs that like to use, even as we're in there. We talked about this already. Maybe a toy box is an even better way to think about it. It's just full of stuff coming out of ideas and story nuggets. So yeah, that was actually pretty interesting. We got a whole new type of dragon. So that is unique, something we hadn't seen before. So I'm enjoying that. I like to see more dragon types here that we haven't seen. It is a little kind of like a knock, I feel like, on the Dragon Blood Sorcerer that exists in the player's handbook that people have been clamoring for updates for years, that they're just like, yeah, it's there, that's cool, you can have a different kind of Dragon Blood. Or like they go specifically to talk about a Warlock with an Archfey patron when 90% of the comments that I've gotten is, why is there not a Dragon Patron Warlock in this book? Something, again, people have been clamoring for since the start of 5th edition. So that kind of seems like a little bit of a shot at players who've been asking for that kind of stuff, which I do feel like they should include at some point, and this was the perfect opportunity to do so. But anyway, folks, more news, I guess, probably to come after 3 p.m. once the official launch has been, covered on the D&D Live later today. So stay tuned. I'll be covering it again. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all next time.